Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the cosmic troubadour of Southern Soul, King Corduroy.
Whew. You just tuned into King Corduroy Presents, and today's guest is Patrick Clifford. A raconteur, a beacon of encouragement, and a titan of the music industry, Patrick Clifford started his career at Nemperor Records, where he discovered, signed, and developed The Romantics with their hit, What I Like About You. He's been vice president of A&R at A&M Records, RCA Music Group, 1010 Music Group, Disney Music Publishing, a consultant at Concord Records, and a label owner. He's worked with artists like Taj Mahal, Ziggy Marley, Etta James, the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and a whole lot more. And he's currently managing and developing acts such as the Weird Sisters right here in Nashville. And he's a fixture in the East Nashville music scene. He's known as the Pope of 5 Points. A friend to all, and I always dig hanging with him. I wanted to get some of his stories, and so we did. I know you're going to dig it. We talk about Willie Nelson, the Faces, James Brown, and a bunch of other stuff. And I wanted to let you know that this episode's brought to you with support from Nashville Custom Hats. They provide fully customized hats with unlimited options. Check out NashvilleCustomHats.com for more info. Y'all enjoy the episode. Pleasure to have the Pope of 5 Points right here in the studio. Okay, so we're friends, and I've known you for a long time, but I researched you a little bit. So I know you were born in Queens.
Long Island City, yep.
And I know you told me your first time backstage was age 15. Rod Stewart, take me there right now.
Well, and it's great because, I just saw a show the other night, and the reason I went was, again, because of that experience that I had. I have a cousin who lives in Brooklyn, who's like my soulmate. He's a couple of years older, and he's always the guy that was turning me on to all the great English music. He worked in a record store when record stores were the king of, culture, and they still are. And his friend Patrick Salvo wrote for a magazine called Cream, and he was able, and he wrote a lot of stuff about Rod Stewart and the Faces, and he got me a ticket. And I got there, and there was a backstage pass. And I didn't know what a backstage pass was. I knew what a backstage was because my godfather ran Radio City Music Hall in New York City. And I used to go there as a kid and hang out and stand next to Rockettes and go there for the Christmas shows.
Incredible.
So I go to the show. I go backstage, and everybody's getting dressed and ready for the show. It was like a circus. It was amazing. And I'd never seen anything like it. I went to the show, and I was already a fan of the Faces and Rod Stewart, and the show was incredible. And the whole time they were on stage, all they did was keep drinking Mateus wine, Mateus. And then I went back afterwards. I figured I should go back and just say hello and thank you. And they're like, hey, come to the hotel room. And I'm like, all right. And I went to the hotel, and it was sort of like something out of the movie Almost Famous. And again, when I was 15 years old, I looked like I was 10 or 11 or 12 maybe. And I went back, and it's the first time I saw somebody throw a television out of a hotel room, and just the merriment and the camaraderie and the knuckleheadism, and yet all driven by music and fashion, and the moment was just stunning. I'm like, this is outrageous.
So you saw a TV thrown from a window, the iconic rock star move.
Yes, sir. At the William Penn Hotel, a famous old hotel in Pittsburgh.
And who threw it?
I want to believe it was Ronnie Wood.
So you saw the Faces. Wow.
Oh, yeah, I was with
Far
the
out.
Faces.
Okay,
yeah.
far out.
It was the
Sure.
Faces, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
It was around when a Not as Good as a Wink to a Blind Horse came out.
Yeah, man.
And it
I
had
love that
all of that vibe and
Stay
all
With
of
Me.
those outfits and the haircuts.
Yeah.
It was stunning.
I love that record. 72.
Yeah.
Yeah, far out, man. Okay, so
Actually, it was earlier than that.
was it earlier?
Yeah, so it must have maybe that record, because that record did come out. I think you're right, 72. I might be wrong. So, but it was the Faces, and it was Kenny Jones and Ian McLaughlin, who became a friend of mine when I moved to Austin in 2002.
The Bump Band.
He was my man. Ronnie Wood, still one of my favorite people and guitar players who I met a couple of years ago, and I've met him a few times but I met him after the Rolling Stones show here with my friend,
Oh, yeah.
the new drummer for the Rolling Stones, Mr. Steve Jordan, Mr. 9.5,
Yeah.
and Ronnie Lane and Stewart, and it was just amazing. So,
Man, that's really incredible. So growing up, you literally like could do anything you wanted to at Radio City Music Hall. You could just hang.
well, I mean, I was really young, and Radio City Music Hall also fell into disarray for a number of years and almost decay. And I think they almost closed it and raised it. But I was going there in the late 50s, early 60s. It was still in the heyday. I was just a child. My godfather, Uncle Packy, he was the stage manager there. And I've told the story where I remember standing knee-high to Rockettes and thinking, like, I don't know what's up there, but count me in, you know. I love this show business.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, you got into show business in such a big way. So I know that in '89 you started working A&R for A&M Records.
Yeah,
What-
but I had a couple of jobs before that, but it was like 87, 88 is when I went to work for Herb Albert and Jerry Moss at A&M Records, which was one of the greatest experiences of my life. You know, they had the Chaplin lot, which was the A&M lot out there on La Brea and Sunset, which Charlie Chaplin built in the, you know, like I think 1915 or so. And it was an amazing place, amazing time, amazing work, amazing acts, amazing people, and there was an amazing culture to it all. And, you know, I signed Blues Traveler there, worked with Soul Asylum, Soundgarden, Gin Blossoms, signed the Neville Brothers, worked with those guys, made the Yellow Moon record with Daniel Lanois, started an Americana label before there was any Americana.
Yeah.
Signed 3 or 4 acts to that label.
The Wagoneers.
Wagoneers were straight up on A&M. It was a country album produced here in Nashville by Emery Gordy. And it was just amazing time in my life, and something I still try to emulate as a person, as a gentleman, as a music man, and those are the kind of cultures I still lust to be around.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, I know you also told me a story that you tried to sign Levon Helm to your label, Americana.
Well, no, that was actually when I was at RCA Records, and it was before 2000. It's probably 1999 or 2000, and I was living in Los Angeles, worked for RCA Records, and I had a meeting with Levon at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel at the pool. Mm-hmm. And it was such an honor to sit with the guy. And sadly, growing up as a kid, I never saw the band live. Never saw them. And it's one of my most favorite bands, and those records are amazing. Obviously, The Last Waltz is an amazing film. You can watch that 100 times over. And we were sitting there, and he could not have been any nicer, and he just, all that charm, that Arkansas personality of that man. And he was saying, Levon, I want to make a record with you. And he goes, man, I love that idea. I said, what? And he's like, what you want me to sing about? I said, how? And I had no idea. I mean, and then it just came to me. I said, how about you sing about rivers, railroads, and barbecue? And he looked at me, he goes, man, I love that idea. And that was the last meeting we had about that. So sadly, it didn't happen, but boy, what an iconic human being and figure and life and legacy and music. And to think, a handful of Canadians and one guy from Arkansas were writing the American Songbook and History book. So amazing band.
Incredible. And something that I consider that I like to ask people, and since you had Americana record label, what about music from Big Pink? I'd say that's the first Americana album.
Well, you know what? I don't even like the term Americana.
Okay.
As it's unfolded. And you're probably right about that, but it's also just one of the greatest records of all times by a bunch of guys and girls that were influenced by so much different music that were trying to make their own stamp on it. And they were influenced by country and blues and rock and folk music and God knows whatever else they listened to and grew up as kids. Whether it was them in Canada or, Garth Hudson, obviously, the training that man had in music was stunning. So I'm sure he was classically trained musician. The only reason he joined the band was they'd have to pay him $5 more a week to be the music teacher to everybody.
And buy him a Lowry organ.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that was in Levi's
And
book.
I never really got to meet him, but boy, that man, again, another guy that was just, what a beautiful, beautiful human being. My friend Malcolm Byrne, who I met through the Neville Brothers with Daniel Lanois, lives up in Woodstock, Kingston area, and he was very close with him up until his death. And he would tell me stories about them spending time together and just how inspiring he was and just what an amazing human being and musician that he was.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so one of the things I know, and you referenced it, was discovering Blues Traveler. Where was the first time you saw him?
I saw them the first time in the East Village, and it was either a Sunday night or a Monday night. I'm a little foggy on that. A dear friend of mine, Josh Warner, who lived in the West Village down the block from me, who was a music guy and also a photographer and tech guy and still one of my best friends. We were talking on a Saturday night at the Corner Bistro, which was our local bar and hangout. And he said, "You got to come with me tomorrow to see this band." And I went. They didn't start playing till midnight. The place was packed with all these groovy and inspired hippie-like people. And they started playing, and the room just exploded. It was like we were in a spaceship when we had left Earth. And they must have played till about 4 or 5 in the morning. They took a break at one time. Everybody's outside, standing on one of the streets there and, smoking pot and drinking beer. And the camaraderie of everybody there was amazing, just amazing. And those guys are still friends of mine. Sad that we lost Bobby Sheehan, the bass player, some years ago. He was a beautiful cat and a real force of nature and such an important, integral part of that band. But, they've been doing this now for 35 years, 40 years. I've lost count, and they still play like a house on fire whenever they get a chance to do that. But I made their first 4 records, and the first one especially, we made that in less than 2.5 days, really.
Wow. In New York?
In New York City, yeah.
Was there a producer on that record?
There was a fellow named Justin Niebank, who lives here in Nashville, who is a world-class producer, engineer, mixing engineer, mixes Keith Urban. He does all the Vince Gill's records. He's done some of the biggest records in the country format in the last God knows how many decades now. And when I met him, I was living in the West Village, and it was a February afternoon. I was just standing on West 4th Street, positively 4th Street, and he and his wife walked out of an apartment building. I was just standing there. He had this big smile. And I said, "Hey, who are you?" He goes, "I'm Justin." And this is my wife, Kathy. I said, "What? Justin who?" He goes, "Justin Niebank." I said, "Justin, what do you do?" He said, "I'm the house engineer at Alligator Records in Chicago."
Yeah, wow.
I said, "Wow, I love that label."
Yeah.
And that guy, Bruce Iglauer, the owner, who's still the owner,
Yeah.
is crazy. He goes, "Oh, he is crazy." And I asked him, I said, "You made a record. I just happen to love this record. It's called Little Ed and the Blues Imperial, and it was called Chicken Scratching."
Yeah.
And I said, "How long did it take you to make that record?" He said, "Well, I made it in a night."
Wow.
I said, "You made it in a night?" He goes, "Yeah, I had them come in, and they came in, and I just had them play their live show a couple of times and recorded it, and then I mixed it." I said, "Well, why did you do it in one night?" He goes, "They work at a car wash, I had no choice. That was the only time they were free from getting off at like 5:30 in the evening and going back to work at 8 o'clock in the morning."
Wow.
And Justin's still a dear, dear friend of mine, incredible music guy. Vince doesn't do anything without him. He's done so many of the Keith Urban records and so many other big hit records, and he's a gem of a human being and a great musician in his own right. And when we made the record, I had to go to New York, from New York to LA for an A&R meeting. And I said, "Justin, whatever you do, Don't change a thing. Don't routine them. Just go in, record them. I'll come back. We'll go through the vocals. We'll go through all the parts, see if we need to punch anything in. We'll mix it. I go out there to L.A. I call him up at the studio. I say, Justin, how's it going? He goes, oh, it's great. It's great. I got to go, though. And call him again. Justin, how's it going? Oh, it's great, great, great. I got back to New York maybe on a Thursday night. I called him up. I said, I'm back. I can't wait to go to the studio. I can't wait to be with the guys. He goes, they're gone. I said, what do you mean they're gone? He goes, we're done. I said, what do you mean you're done? He goes, I finished the record last night. I said, you what? He goes, I finished the record. I did it. It's done. It's and it's mixed. We're all done. I said, well, I guess I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We can listen to a playback at least of the record. I felt so brokenhearted because I used to love being in the studio when people were recording and just to see that, the camaraderie and everything that goes on around making record. And you know what that's all about. And I said, well, at least we can master it on Monday with Greg Calby at Sterling. He said, oh, I did that yesterday too. So, and I think to me, it's the best record because it really documents this phoenix rising from the ashes. And they were so different than what was happening on radio or what most bands looked like at that time. And then you had, the Spin Doctors coming out at the same time. And then the Horde Tour where it was the Black Crowes and Fish and All Good and,
Colonel Bruce Hampton.
And
Lenny Kravitz.
So many bands that came off of the Horde stuff that was and those shows were always amazing and so well thought out, and just these bands just coming up together, and Dave Matthews Band, as well. And there's countless others. I know Wilco played on some of those shows
Rusted
back
Root,
in the day.
Medeski, Martin and Wood.
Those guys for sure.
I saw the Horde Tour in '94. I was 11 years old.
The first one at Jones Beach, they had a bagpipe band, drum and pipe band march in to start the day. It was fucking awesome. Man. And Rod Stewart had some bagpipes, not live, but recorded music the other night, and that really gets me worked up.
Oh, golly. Well, there's a lot of things I want to offshoot from there, but since we're on Horde, that and Lollapalooza, people kind of say that laid the template for what the modern festival is.
Right.
What was your thought, and what was the music industry's thought when the Horde Festival came about? Because it's kind of a jam band thing.
I don't know if the music industry cared one way or the other than if you were participating in it or your bands were being exposed in it, specifically Horde I'm talking to.
Yeah.
But I think, the smart promoters, the smart agents, the smart managers saw that this is going to be a lifestyle circumstance to really capitalize on exposing music. There's no internet, obviously. It was either radio or live, touring and press, word of mouth. And I think it did set a precedent for, people wanting to be part of lifestyle events like that.
Yeah.
And discovery of bands that came out of that, too.
Big time.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alligator Records, to go back to that first Blues Traveler album, Alligator Records is a blues label in essence.
Right.
And then obviously John Popper is an outstanding harmonica player. So the instinct you would think would be to make a blues record. But like you said, it was its own thing. It was rock. What was your thought process?
My thought process was, and I had seen, at that point, I'd seen them a number of times. I've spent time with them. We had negotiated a deal to sign them. Bill Graham and his son were the managers of Blues Traveler at that point. Yes.
Wow.
And I had a meeting, and I knew Mr. Graham from when I started out working for my mentor, Nat Weiss, at Emperor Records, and I really admired him. And obviously, you talk about another human being that really changed the face of just music and culture and community and obviously, live music scene.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a meeting in the A&M building in New York, which was the Fuller building, which one of the original Art Deco buildings, one of the original skyscrapers. And we were on the 16th floor. The windows would open where you could throw an industrial-sized refrigerator out. And I sat with Mr. Graham, and I said, Bill, I always called him Mr. Graham, and he'd always go, "My name's Bill. Don't call me Mr. Graham. I'll punch you." And I loved that man. He was unbelievable and so very kind to me also. And I said, "Sir, I'm going to give you $40,000, and you can buy weed, guns," because Papa was, infatuated with weapons, hamburgers, a van, but we got to get a record out of this. And I looked at him and I thought, this guy's going to stand up and he's going to throw me out of the window. And he got up, he put his hand out, shook my hand, and he said, "That's not a good deal. That's a great deal. Now, good luck." I said, "Well, what about good luck to all of us?" "Good luck to you, young man." And he walked out the door, and then, a couple of weeks later, somehow I was destined to meet Justin, and we pulled it off. And again, that record was it's almost like a documentary of this group, just rising out of the East Village and all the energy of the people around them. And again, at one point, I was almost tempted to make a live record, but somehow that record encapsulates all of what they did at Nightingale's, and that would translate it to Wetlands and to other clubs around the town and other clubs and venues around, the East Coast where they started touring and playing. And it was like nothing else I'd ever seen, quite honestly. It was really, really special.
Okay, another thing that maybe unseen for a while was the Wetlands scene.
Right.
Was it like heavy improvisational factor to it?
There was everything. I mean, again, Spin Doctors, you had, all these jam bands before anybody called them jam bands.
Yeah.
They were just all playing music, and there was a lot of jazz. And even to Popper's mentor was a guy named Arnie Lawrence from New Jersey, who was a sax player, who was Stan Getz's music teacher.
Wow.
So Popper really
Wow.
comes from a big, jazz and big musical landscape. So to think like, oh, it's got to be a blues record, going back to that point, would have been just limiting to not allow them to just express themselves. And again, we never really routined, them to go through the material. It was just like, this is their live set. This is what they've written. This is so autobiographical about who they are and everybody around them. We just need to capture this. And the funniest thing is, for years, they hated record producers. And they disliked Justin Niebank. And I'm like, how do you dislike this guy? And I only got Popper maybe 5 or 10 years ago to tell me why. And it was because he yelled at them for smoking pot in the studio. He was like, "We got to focus on this." And I'm like, "Justin, that was the wrong thing to do. You let them smoke as much weed as they want to back then, But it was an amazing time. And then the second record had, Will the Mountains Win Again, which became a big Coors commercial. And the third record we made at Opelousas, Louisiana, and Papa almost killed himself on a Harley.
Wow.
But months later, he was rehabilitated, and we toured Colorado all spring, where he was in a wheelchair. We're wheeling him onto stages every night, and everybody else was out skiing with fans and giving away records and tickets and having Blues Traveler music play. It was like, it was the social media of the moment.
Yeah.
And kids would be there from all around the country, and they'd either be going back to their hometowns telling people about Blues Traveler, or they'd be going back to college to tell their friends about Blues Traveler. Yeah. And we would tour with all the coolest bands at the time. But it was all the touring and just how ferocious they were as a live band, and the inclusion of the audience, much like the legacy of what the Grateful Dead, built and what they designed for their fan base, and countless other acts as well. But certainly the Dead is right out there. And again, we were always encouraging people to tape shows, and there was a lot of trading going on in that. There wasn't as much distribution of that as there is now.
Yeah.
But it was exhilarating. And they were great guys. They were fun to be with. The audiences were great. Kids would travel, around the country to go see them. And then, the thing they did at Red Rocks on the 4th of July, they've been doing that for almost 3 decades still.
Wow.
where they are the band to play on the 4th of July.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
And that was, back in the day, again, before internet and Instagram and take, videos of this and that, was always unbelievable experience. Unbelievable.
Yeah, dude. Well,
Yeah.
so you touched on another thing, because I used to trade tapes. So that's something a lot of people can't fathom now. But
Right.
you would find somebody that had a show that you wanted. You had a show, so they would mail you
Yeah.
the show and some blank tapes.
Right.
And then you would mail, copy your show.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
so much of this is how cavemen probably got music out. You had to go out and somehow get people to pay attention to you, to build an audience, and then to traffic that audience to bigger places and be able to encourage people to bring their friends who don't know about you into the fold to be part of the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're working for icons, Jerry Moss and Herb Alpert.
Yeah.
Did they have an opinion on trading tapes and recording shows?
Not that I recall, other than they were record men, so they wanted to sell records.
Exactly.
They wanted to have publishing, but they didn't frown on it, and they were cool. These guys weren't cool. They were the epitome of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like so cool. I mean, if these guys walked in the room right now, I'd get down and on my knees to say thank you. Herb is still out there, 90 years old, touring with Tijuana Brass. Jerry sadly passed away a year or so ago. These guys were the epitome of cool. Their legacy will be nothing but that, and Herb is still living it. Still out there playing, and every night he gets on stage, he addresses that audience saying, "This isn't about what I've done, who we've done it with, what we've accomplished. This is about tonight. It's about us together, this music, my opportunity to share my music, to share this moment with you. But it's not about me. It's about us." Oh, these guys, they're still my heroes.
That's so cool. And Jerry donated $25 million, I saw, to like a venue in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's in downtown, and it's world-class facility, and they were very kind with their money and philanthropy. And philanthropy was a big part of working at A&M and Almo Irving, which was the publishing company for all the years they ran it. And they were just about art, artists. And I used to always tell them, you could get every artist that is signed to A&M and bring him into this giant, they had a soundstage on the A&M lot.
Yep.
A lot of famous TV shows were shot there. And I say, you could put out food and beverage and invite everybody to come here and bring their families, and they'd be here for days talking about, their kids, about life, about politics, about art, about culture, about their music, about somebody else's music. There was just an amazing camaraderie amongst people because Herb and Jerry took over the playground built by Charlie Chaplin and made it their own and made it a playground for everybody who came on that lot or came into that culture of theirs. As long as you were a gentleman or a gentlewoman, that you were responsible, that you were accountable, and more importantly, had a vision and an opinion of what you wanted to help change the world. And again, like with Blues Traveler, one of the greatest days ever, because none of these guys had seen him before I signed them, between Herb Alpert, Jerry Moss, Abe Summer, who was one of the attorneys, Bill Graham was at this thing, David Anderley, who's a mentor of mine, who was a famous A&R man and producer at Elektra and A&M, who I was working for at the time when I signed Blues Traveler. And A&M would have a picnic for everybody who worked for the company. And they'd do it out in Malibu, and they'd put up rides, and they'd put up circus tents, and there'd be food. And literally, one afternoon, the afternoon, Saturday afternoon, Stan Getz was there. I remember him laying there and Popper insulting him.
What'd he say?
He told him he was a cheap fuck because he didn't tip cab drivers.
What?
And he heard that from Arnie Lawrence. And Stan Getz wanted to fight Popper. It was pretty funny.
Oh, my goodness.
But they played a set after they had this children's bingo. You got Blues Traveler on stage. Everybody's under this big circus tent. And at the soundboard is David Anderley, who was my boss and mentor, Herb Albert, Jerry Moss, Bill Graham, Abe Summer, who was a famous attorney who was a big part of A&M. And these guys are seeing him for the first time. And watching them, it was like watching him as if they had taken LSD. Their eyes were popping out of their head. And it was like they were at the Monterey Pop Festival seeing like something for the first time. It was really, really cool. But that's what this is supposed to be about, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Acts that are like, holy mackerel.
You were talking about A&M Studio and Henson Studios.
Right.
Also, Chaplin started. I used to live around the corner. I would walk by all the time. But one of the biggest things that happened there is the We Are the World sessions. Were you around?
Actually, I was. I was living in New York, but what I would do on January 2nd or 3rd after Christmas and wherever I had spent Christmas and New Year's, I would go out to Los Angeles and I would live on the lot and I would sleep on a couch in the A&R offices that was above the sound stage that was right next to the studio.
Wow.
And I would, join a gym so I'd have some place to go take a shower and we'd hang out and we'd just hustle and bustle all day long and go out and see bands and have something to eat and come back and hang out there all night. And it was just magical. And I was I didn't get to go into the studio, but I got to see just the coming and going of everybody. But it was like that a number of nights at that studio. There was, because everybody was recording there. And it was, again, a pet project or not even a pet project. I mean, it was a massive work on the effort of Herb Alpert and Jimmy Iovine and Shelley Yakis and countless other people.
So that was like the night of the American Music Awards?
I think it was. I don't remember that specifically, but I think you're correct about that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. All right. Here's one.
There were a lot of limousines coming and going that night, I'll tell you that.
I bet there were.
There was a lot of people hanging in the parking lot and like on the lot. It was really pretty magical.
Okay, so speaking of limousines, and this is in New York City, you told me a story once about James Brown wanting to have a meeting with you
Right.
in your office. Will you tell me about that? Tell me that story.
Well, it's a long story, but I'll try to make it a short story.
No, I want the long version.
So I had started working at Capitol Records. They had an office. It was a satellite office because it wasn't, Hollywood and Vine obviously is where the Capitol Tower is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working there as vice president of A&R, and I was sitting with a friend of mine named Larry Yasgar, who we had a label with at A&M, and we were just visiting. And before that, he was an old school promotion guy at Atlantic Records, a real character. And we're sitting on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and the phone rings, and I pick it up. My girl was out at lunch, and this guy gets on the phone, and he identifies himself as Mr. Sunday, and he works for the new James Brown Company in Macon, Georgia, and that James Brown is a big fan of mine, and that James Brown has these new acts, and he really wants you to hear them as soon as possible. And I said, Mr. Sunday, I really appreciate that. And I thought it was a friend of mine just goofing on me.
Yeah, like you didn't take that seriously.
No, and so I just kept talking, and Larry's there laughing. And I'm like, well, tell James Brown I said hi. And he goes, Mr. Brown really wants me to come to New York tomorrow to see you before the Thanksgiving holiday. And I'm like, okay, Mr. Sunday, sure. And he goes, well, wait a second, though. Mr. Brown wants to speak to you. So next thing, I'm on the phone, and I'm talking to James Brown.
Incredible.
And he's going on and on and on about how he's a big fan of my work in Capitol Records, and he'd just gotten out of jail, I believe, for the bit with.
Whoa.
And I don't,
That
for whatever
video,
reason.
that's out there.
Yeah. And so he's going on, and I'm thinking, like, I can't believe I'm talking to James Brown, and it's James Brown. You know, there's nobody to talk like that, man. And finally, he's like, and Mr. Sunday's going to get back on the phone, and I insist he comes to see you tomorrow. And here's Mr. Sunday. And I said, well, Mr. Brown, before you go, what are you having for dinner on Thanksgiving? I don't know what even made me think of that, but I like Thanksgiving, especially in New York, and then I would fly to Pittsburgh to see my parents. And there's this pregnant pause, and all of a sudden, he yells out, turkey, mashed potatoes, black-eyed peas, string beans, and he's just going on and on. It's like he's singing it to me, what he's going to have for dinner.
Yeah.
And I said to him, wow, Mrs. Brown must be a hell of a cook. Man, that cook, she's outrageous. She's magnificent. And literally the next day, Mr. Sunday flew to New York, met me at the office, had a Radio Shack cassette with 3 acts, with 3 songs for each one of them. And we sat in the office, he played them for me, and it was fine. And I said, thank you very much, Mr. Sunday, and, you know, have a good trip home. Please tell Mr. Brown I said hi. Happy Thanksgiving to him. And he left, and as he's leaving, he goes, well, Mr. Brown's going to be here at the top of the new year. We're doing an MTV show, and he really wants to come and meet you. And I'm like, okay, sure. I can't wait to meet Mr. Brown, and happy Thanksgiving. So off they go. You know, Thanksgiving comes and goes. Christmas, New Year's. It's now like middle of January, end of January. I get a call from Mr. Sunday. And he goes, we're going to be in town tomorrow afternoon, and Mr. Brown wants to come and see you.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, here's the address. You know where we're at. Come on. Yeah. My girl, Valerie, who was wonderful, Valerie Killigrew. I love this woman, and she was such a wonderful help to me in my career and to so many things. And she loved music. And I hope she's well. I hope she hears this. I hope she hears a shout out about how much I love her. So right. Valerie starts telling all the people in the building. It was a high rise in Midtown Manhattan in the 50s across from the Sheraton. So the next day, I come to work, and people are dressed like they're going to like a New Year's Eve ball. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's now about 2:30 or 3, whenever they're supposed to come. I'm in the office. Yes, Valerie, they're here. I go out to the elevator, and now there's Mr. Sunday, 3 or 4 different gentlemen who are Natalie attired, who identify themselves as colonels, and the James Brown dancers, but no Mr. James Brown.
Oh, golly.
So they all come into the office, and Mr. Sunday pulls out the same cassette with the same 3 acts and the same 3 songs from each act, and he plays them again. And again, I don't know how to not accommodate them after their effort to come see me. No James Brown, though. But now I'm sitting in a chair, and I've got the James Brown dancers dancing in my office to 9 songs by 3 different acts.
And singing, or just
no? They're singing, carrying on. I mean, it was crazy. So finally, that's over. I'll see you later. Tell Mr. Brown I hope he feels better. You know, he goes, well, Mr. Brown wants to come and see you tomorrow. I'm like, yep, that's great. I'll be out late tonight. I'm seeing some shows down in the East Village. I'm going to Brownies. I'll probably be here about noon tomorrow. If you guys want to come by, just give a call. I'd love to meet Mr. Brown. Cut to the next morning. I'm laying in bed. Phone rings at 8:30. It's Valerie. Valerie's like, you better get here now. I'm like, what's up? She goes, James Brown is sitting in your office.
Wow.
So I go, I brush my teeth, I throw clothes on, I get in the cab. I lived in the Village at that time. Go uptown, get to the office, and here's James Brown with his hands on the back of my desk, standing there, sort of with his legs crossed, Natalie attired in James Brown's finest garb. And there's all these girls that were secretaries that worked at Capitol and EMI and other places. I have no idea who they even were. And they're all sitting there on the floor looking at James Brown, and he's talking and carrying on. So everybody leaves. And now it's me, James Brown. I don't think the dancers were there that time. One or two of his colonels were there. Mr. Sunday pulls out the same Radio Shack cassette. Same 3 acts, same 3 songs. And I'm sitting in a chair much like this. But now I'm listening to them with James Brown singing to me and giving me lap dances. No. I swear to God. It was amazing. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. So we go through all of that. And then James Brown starts going on and talking about how he's going to take over the world and how he's out of jail and it's the new James Brown Company and he and I are going to change the world and Capitol Records. And there's one of those like sort of radiators that he could climb up on. And now he's standing in this like floor to ceiling window overlooking like 7th or 8th Avenue, Midtown Manhattan. And I'm looking, and I can see people pointing up and saying, looking up and seeing him in the window. There's James Brown screaming, and he's going on and on and on. And finally, you know, he's like done with his diatribe, and he's like, "Okay, we're leaving. Here's some tickets. Come to our show tomorrow." And I can't wait for this to happen. And they went down to the elevator, and I can see it out there on the avenue, and it's got a hot tub in the trunk, and they all get in. He had a fur coat on, and they drive away. And that was the last I ever heard of James Brown and or Mr. Sunday. I would see Mr. Brown on stage after that, but it was one of the greatest meetings of my entire life.
Oh, dude, that's so
incredible.
incredible.
Really happened.
And I love that he wanted the tape back every time.
Oh, yeah. You can't keep this. I own this. I'm James Brown.
Oh, it's so good.
Yep.
Also, for context on this James Brown, after he was arrested, he was on CNN talking about
that
it.
whole crazy bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Brother Ted, where you at, brother? Yeah. I'm out on love.
Right.
But you could reference that video.
Well, and he was going off like that in the office, looking uptown and waving his hands and like, you know, I'm out of jail. I'm going to change the world and blah, 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 blah. And the cutest thing was just like looking out the window and seeing all these people, you know, in Midtown Manhattan stopping and looking up and pointing as if like King Kong was on top of the building or something. But again, James Brown is King Kong.
Yeah. Well, just what a
talent, what a life, what a insane.
Yes, and incredible that he performed for you in your office.
Oh my
man.
God.
What are the chances?
It was nuts.
Okay, so you were at A&M, but then like you said, you were at Capitol. Like, okay, so it's like 94 to 96. Was that like a stint where you were with Capitol, basically?
That sounds about right, yeah.
But mainly out of New York, and then
in New York, and I'd go out to Los Angeles. That's where the office was, and where I'd go out there for big marketing meetings and sales meetings, and I tried to sign a couple of acts there in that time, and sadly, it didn't work out. It wasn't a really good time to be at Capitol Records, even though there was a lot of great people there and there was great music there. But one of the best things that happened there was we were trying to sign Sean Lennon, who was at the time was a minor. Wow. Yoko Ono was still signed as an artist to Capitol.
Oh, really?
And my boss asked me to go meet her at St. John's the Divine, great cathedral that's up in Harlem, and to be you know, her A&R guy. So I go up to she was having a benefit for Keith Haring, who had passed away. And I go up there and I meet Yoko through her assistant or her PA, and then I meet Yoko, and I'm not going to try to talk like Yoko, but she's like, "You come to house." Like, you mean the Dakota house? That house?
Wow,
yeah. You meet me at Dakota at 7:00.
Wow, yeah.
I'm like, okay. And I was never in the Dakota. I walked by it all the time because I used to live on the Upper West Side and obviously Central Park, 72nd Street. So the next thing I know, I'm going into the Dakota. I get to their floor. her PA greets me, please take your shoes off. I take my shoes off. I walk inside. And here now is the white Imagine piano in this little room by itself.
Incredible.
And the place was massive. And so much of John Lennon's artwork was everywhere, pictures. I mean, it was overwhelming. I wish I would have been able to take photographs of it, to be able to say I really, saw all of this stuff. And I go in, she had this giant kitchen that was sort of like a den kitchen. And I'm sitting there, and she comes out with all these letters saying, John hate Paul, John hate Paul. And she's reading these letters that John Lennon had written about Paul McCartney. And I'm like, oh, my God. And again, as a young man working for my guy, Nat Weiss, who was my mentor, who had Emperor Records and was involved with the Beatles, I got to meet 4 different Beatles at different times.
Wow. And
John Lennon, obviously a hero, and McCartney and George and Mr. Ringo as well. And then she goes, you like Chinese food? I love Chinese food. She goes, I send driver to Mr. Chow's, which is, the high-end Chinese food, from England that was in L.A. because Jerry Moss opened the shop there, and then New York. Okay. So next thing I have a Chinese meal with Yoko Ono at the Dakota. And I leave, and the next day I get a call from her PA saying, Yoko would like you to come back to listen to her record. So I come back maybe a day or two later. It's the middle of the afternoon, go upstairs, take her shoes off, go inside, and she leads me to their bedroom. And she insists that I sit and or lay on their bed to listen to her record.
Wow. Crazy, man.
Okay. And it was actually, there's a lot of really good stuff on it. It was really amazing experience.
Wait, hold on. You got to talk about, because like Yoko Ono, like Plastic Ono Band, and like I believe they performed on the Johnny Cash show, and there's video of that. Yeah. But she like screams. Basically.
Well, this wasn't all screaming. There was some singing and spoken word stuff, as I recall. But after the meeting, I said to her, and I meant it sincerely. I was really impressed, and I wanted to do my best work to help her with her work, because you talk about a true artist, that's an artist,
Yeah.
And
no doubt.
So I said, the head of marketing and the head of publicity are going to be in New York next week. You should have them over to listen to the record, because it will make such an impact on them. And we did. We go upstairs, everybody's shoes off, into the house, and she made us all lay in the bed to listen to the record. And that was the last time I saw Yoko Ono. I spoke to her once or twice after that, but it was an honor and privilege to be in their home, be in her home.
Yeah, man.
To be around Sean Lennon. Mm-hmm. And her work was really impressive. And again, I thought it was going to be horrifying.
Yeah, buddy.
It had the potential for that.
Indeed. Did you interact with Rick Rubin in that era?
Just a bit. And his partner, one of the partners was George Drakoulias.
Yeah, great
who's
producer.
One of my dear, dear friends. And we convinced George to come to work at A&M and to leave Def Jam. He was working with a band called Mr. Crow's Garden, which turned out to be the Black Crowes. Yeah. And we did not sign them at A&M, which was a big mistake.
You passed on the Black Crowes.
I didn't pass on it. And George didn't pass on it.
Yeah.
But somebody did, of a higher authority. And after that, George went back to Def America and obviously produced, those first 2 records, which are remarkable.
Yeah, man. And like Tom Petty.
Yeah. And I really respect and admire Rick Rubin a great deal. And he's a very unique personality. And again, half the fun of finding great bands to record or be a part of is the biggest challenge is finding the right producers. And, and in this day and age, so many people can make a record because the technology is so accessible, and they do, and they will. And a lot of people do it at the expense of having a great producer who's a collaborator and a co-conspirator and who brings perspective to a project that artist might not necessarily either possess and or have, or might not have thought of. And I still think producers are essential to, to legacy recordings.
Oh man, no doubt. And they
Yeah.
could be so many different things, like their role, what a producer does.
Right.
Well, okay, so that touches on something that I did feel like I wanted to ask you about, because as an A&R guy, you've spent your whole career discovering bands and then helping them come up with a concept, material, whatever, nurturing them into making their record. But I know now, when we've talked, like you said, technology is so accessible, people can afford to make their own record now. And I believe you told me that a lot of the bands that you're interested in are presenting to like Concord already have a record complete. Like almost, if you don't already have a record, you're behind the curve. What are your thoughts there?
I don't know. Again, things have changed because of technology. Things have changed because it's a faster world. Things have changed. There's lesser gatekeepers. Things have changed because there's so many ways to get music out that don't rely on what was the major label system and/or the really bullish and mature independent labels that were so significant, that were still, part of that ecosystem. And now, the world of distro, you can make your record and, give it to somebody and they'll quote unquote put it, promote it to all the DSPs. So again, it's almost like everybody goes Z to A now. It's almost like rather than A to Z. And there's not the artist development, the artist discovery, the artist development, the artist nurturing that used to exist when I got started in the late 70s, the 80s, the 90s. I think that's not gone. It still exists, but it's not necessarily what was the norm at one point. Now it's almost like an anomaly that things happen like that. So again, that's where the importance of, great managers and great people around artists and the artist having, either the wherewithal or the passion to find people to be a part of that. And to me, I've always encouraged artists to work with producers because the best artists are involved in the production of the record, whether it says produced by or not. Now, granted, there are great artists that are so talented and so have the bandwidth to do all of this, but not everybody does, and some people end up sacrificing being 100% artist, trying to show that they can be whatever percentage a meaningful producer. And I think more times than not, that doesn't really translate into something that it becomes a timeless legacy-like recording. And again, there's exceptions to the rule where, Jimmy Page to this day will tell you he produced the first Led Zeppelin record and then Glenn Johns did not. Glenn Johns would argue that he produced the first Led Zeppelin record. And the one time I did meet Glenn Johns at A&M, he was best friends with David Anderle, who again was my mentor and a tormentor, and the torment in the nicest of ways. And they were best of friends. And the time I met him, I said, "Mr. Johns, can I ask you a question, sir?" And he goes, "Yes, Patrick, what's on your mind, lad?" I said, "How many people died making the first Led Zeppelin record?" And he was Natalie attired, English gentleman. And I could see his eyes rolling and smoke started coming out of his ears. And he started yelling. He wasn't yelling at me. He was just yelling. He goes, "No one died, but many should have." And I was like, wow.
Yeah, I've heard he's an intense dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was also a gentleman, a pleasant man. And his brother Andy Johns had a great career. And
No doubt.
Ethan Johns, his son, is an amazing producer and artist and personality in his own right. And
those Ray LaMontagne records that Ethan did are great. And he played most of the instruments on them too. Yeah, man, no doubt. The Johns brothers, and also their own method of recording drums with two overheads
stunning
and the
recordings.
kick.
I mean, so many of my favorite English records were made by Glenn Johns.
Nashville Custom Hats specializes in creating fully custom hats from scratch, allowing you to design exactly what you need. Pricing is based on quantity, so adding extra details won't increase the cost, and the minimum starts at only 50 quantities. Thanks to rapid growth over the past 3 years, they've launched the NCH store, now recognized as Nashville's favorite hat destination. The NCH store at 501 Union Street in the heart of the Art District in downtown Nashville, you can pick up vintage hats, design custom hats to order, buy NCH branded hats, or even just make one on the spot at the hat bar. And make sure you get you some coffee while you're there, because it's strong medicine. This hat I'm wearing is the Dirty Bird. This is a denim hat. You can see different details like the back, the leather strap, choices for stitching on the inside. So when you hear you can add any extra details, these would be examples. A rope, a colored rope, maybe multicolored hat. The sky is the limit and the cost never goes up. Every episode I wear an NCH branded hat, so if you see something you like, you know where to find it.
I moved to Austin in 1996 after leaving Capitol Records. My then girlfriend and I were living in New York City in the West Village. I was somewhat happily unemployed, enjoying a summer in the Hamptons on the beach, and we were pregnant with our first child, Mr. Harry James Clemente Clifford.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, I guess I need to find a gig to feed these guys. And at that time, I had this romantic notion that I wanted our son to be born in Austin, Texas. So as a second-generation Irish-American kid from Queens in New York, would have a Texan. I was infatuated with Texas and cowboy movies, obviously growing up, and had been to Texas a few times, and that's actually where I met the mother of my two children, Kimberly Manning Clifford, and we decided to get an apartment in Austin, Texas. I still had the apartment in New York.
Was that downtown? Where was it?
My place?
Yeah, in Austin.
In Austin?
Yeah.
We were in off of South Lamar, out past, on the way out to the Broken Spoke.
Got
past,
it.
Past
like William
Saxon
Cannon,
Pub.
William Cannon area. Yeah.
And so Harry James was born there on March 12th, 1996, at the beginning of a South by Southwest, and I was down there unemployed, and I've been going to all the South by Southwest. That's where I met his mother, was at the very first one. And he was born. I walked outside. I fell to my knees. I looked up into the sky, and I saw God. And God does look like Willie Nelson. And I said, thank you, God. I own a Texan. And God looked at me and said, son, you don't own shit. 2 Texans own you. And later that and about 2 hours after that, I was at the South by Southwest golf tournament playing with my dear friend Ray Benson from Asleep at the Wheel, my friend Jeffrey Osborne, Ted Anthony, and my dear friend Larry Hamby. All these guys are dear friends, playing golf, having had my son birthed into the world.
Wow, how about that, man?
Yeah.
That's
but
legend.
Then and after that, we were going between New York and Los Angeles, and I mean Austin and New York, and then I did get a new gig working for RCA Records, RCA Victor, but they also had at that time a label called High Street from San Francisco, and they were also the gatekeepers of what was Wyndham Hill, started by Will Ackerman and his then wife Ann, which was became a new age label, but was never started as a new age label. It was just guys and girls that were making outsider music outside the boundaries,
Yeah, man.
And there were great artists there and amazing artists. So that's when I went out to Los Angeles in '96.
So that was that a precursor to people saying Americana? They were saying,
well, no, at that point,
or
Americana was
alt-country?
part of the dialogue. When I started that label with my partner Steve Rabowski at A&M, there was no Americana thing. There was no Americana chart. There was an Americana this, Americana that.
Yeah.
It was done as a label and we had this Cubist buffalo, and it was just like anything that has, it's influenced by American music, if it was unique. But I also wanted it as a minor league team to do records for lesser budgets and lesser people involved, to try to germinate these things by making great records, trying to get great press, hoping for some radio, and most of all these people being able to go out and tour and build audiences.
Yeah.
So in '96, when I went out there was a full-blown Americana chart, and Americana this, Americana that.
The Texas music chart, basically?
Yeah, that existed at that time, yeah.
Is that what you would refer to as the Americana chart? Or
No. There was an Americana thing at that point.
Oh, wow.
I like to be able to say an artist name, and that name resonates for me, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's Bob Dylan, or it's the Grateful Dead, or Blues Traveler, or, on and on and on, Elvis Presley. But it's like when Tyler Childers won the Emerging Artist that year, and he came out on stage, and he said, I don't want this. I'm not an Americana artist. I'm a country boy from Kentucky.
Yeah.
And that's what he is. He's Tyler Childers, And I get the association, and I applaud it, and I have a lot of friends there, and I'll be omnipresent because it's here in our backyard with everybody playing, and the award show is always incredibly well done. And it's a very meaningful organization. Don't get me wrong. I just don't like that things can't just stand on their own when you say an artist's name, that they defy being in a category.
Yeah.
Even though I understand we live in a world where everything's got to fit into a little place, and whether it's because of radio or because of this or that, and a lot of it was dictated by radio and radio formats, and so it is what it is.
Okay, when you mentioned that, I want to that Tyler Childers speech also online. He kind of referenced being a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I believe actually put blood on a white suit. Was at least what I read that. I don't know if that's true.
Right, that night at that.
Yeah, the Americana Award show.
I just remember the white outfit, and it was, I think, sort of mimicking Colonel Sanders.
Yes.
And Tyler's a friend, and I tried very hard to sign him to Loma Vista Records with the Tom and Ryan Wally when I was consulting for Concord. And I think he's one of the most important artists to come down the pike in so many years.
Oh, he's brilliant.
I love him.
And produced by your great friend Fergie, David Ferguson.
And he's a dear friend. Fergie is as well. Fergie's the ultimate drink ticket when you go on the Outlaw Country Cruise. Stay close to him, or make sure that he's on board. I love Dave Ferguson.
Yeah, talk about him a little bit, because he's a legendary engineer producer.
He's legendary, and he's done so much great stuff as an artist, as a writer, and certainly an incredible producer and engineer. And years ago when I was at A&M, one of the records we did that was part of the Americana series was an artist named David Wilcox from Asheville, North Carolina. We did this record, and it was produced by my friend Patrick McCarthy, who I met through Daniel Lanois, and it was Patrick's first record production in his career. He had been an engineer, mixing engineer, and he went on to produce REM records after that. But Fergie was around the studio, and Cowboy Jack Clement, and I don't know if you ever had a chance to meet Cowboy Jack, but
I did not.
That man was amazing and such an inspiration, and a guy whose business card was like him on a swing with a top hat and a big coat and a mandolin saying, we're in the fun business. If we're not having fun, we're not doing our job.
Wow, that was his card?
And I'll send a copy of it.
You got one?
Oh, yeah, I have one, but I've got a photo of it, and I send it to people all the time. But I'll send it to you. But he was amazing, and he would come into the studio when we were making the record. And that was another record we made for $20,000. And if I listened to it now, it would make me smile. It would bring joy to my heart. It would make me cry. And it's a magnificent record. And again, years later, David Wilcox still has a career. He still tours, still makes records, and he's an amazing, amazing singer-songwriter.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and that was in the attic, that studio?
Yeah, it was upstairs.
Yeah,
and
talk about that.
Before they fixed it up, it was really pretty ramshackle. It was outrageous.
Yeah, and that was a scene in and of itself.
Oh, totally. And Fergie was the man, and Cowboy Jack was the man, and people would hang there. And I remember when I was at A&M, we made the Yellow Moon record with the Neville Brothers, which I'm madly proud of and so happy to be a part of.
That won a Grammy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we sold a lot of records. Aaron went on to make a solo record after that was very significant. Speaking of him, I still get texts from him almost every day from 83-year-old Aaron Neville with a song or a video. And I need to call him and say, what do you want me to do with all of this? But
he's sending you new songs still.
No, it's not new songs.
Okay.
It's just moments in his life.
Okay,
as if,
got it.
We need to put this all together, or maybe he just does it because he likes me, and I know he does like me, and we speak, every blue moon. But when we did, the Yellow Moon record, and we finished it, and I went to New Orleans to hear the mixes with Daniel, and it just so happened that night, it was the first time the Grateful Dead were back in New Orleans in 25 years, and the Neville Brothers threw a fish fry for the Grateful Dead out on this old fishing pier, in a house on Lake Pontchartrain, and Art Neville's cooking redfish for Jerry Garcia, and it was outrageous. And there was only their band and the Nevilles and a couple of family friends and myself.
Wow.
I went and heard the record, and either that day or the next day I flew back to New Orleans to Nashville on my way to go to either L.A. or New York to take the record and deliver it. And my friend Craig Hayes, God rest his soul, who's gone, the beautiful guy who was an attorney but also a musician, and he was the Neville's attorney, and he's the one that waltzed me in to the Neville Nation. We did that in an abandoned warehouse or apartment building next to the Columns Hotel on St. Charles Street.
Yeah,
And
legendary.
Lamois and Malcolm and his team, Mark Howard, they just brought in all their mobile gear and set up a studio. It was crazy. But Craig picked me up at the airport. It's a Sunday night. And he goes, come on, let's go to Cowboy Jack Clement's place. And we'll go smoke pot and listen to the record. And I'm like, Cowboy's not going to be up. We go there. We pull in. And in the darkness of his sort of roundabout entrance to his recording spa and home, there's like three guys smoking cigarettes. And it turned out to be Adam Clayton and Larry Mullins and Bono.
Wow.
And then we say, hey, we just did this record with your buddy Daniel Lanois.
Yeah.
And
Joshua Tree.
They're like, because they were doing Rattle and Hum. With, with Cowboy at that time.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. But, Lanois and produced so many of those
Totally.
remarkable U2 records.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, can we hear the record, lad? Can we listen to the record? I'm like, well, of course we can. Dang. We go inside, and Cowboy's there, and everybody's, smoking some weed, and they listen to the record from top to bottom. Nobody said a word. Cowboy would dance around like he was tangoing. He was an amazing dance teacher and dancer in his own right. And the record ended, and everybody's just there like, oh, my God, this is breathtaking. Can we listen to it again? I'm like, oh, of course we can.
Oh, wow.
And we sat there till about 6 or 8 o'clock in the morning in Cowboy's studio listening to the record. And it wasn't even upstairs. It was downstairs, like sort of his workspace where he would listen to playbacks, and he had his instruments, and he'd write songs. But it was magical. And those are the kind of things why, you'd want to do this stuff, because you get to do that, or you get to meet somebody for the first time that you've never met. And some of the meetings are great, like the Levon Helm thing. Some of them aren't so great, but it's an honor and privilege to be able to somehow be any part of that universe,
Yeah, man.
You do it as an artist and as a personality, and the people you get to meet, and also just the people you get to meet being on the road that are there, that they could be working in car washes or steel mills, but how important the music is and that connection is. It's still that will last forever.
That's the glue.
Yeah,
man.
I saw Kurt Vonnegut recently do an interview, and I don't know how old it is, and he's sitting on the stage in a chair like this, and it's totally dark, and he goes, I believe in God. Pregnant pause. You know why I believe in God? Pregnant pause. I believe in God because of music.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God. And it's still the music that drives me to do this or want to even do this with you right now, you know, and have the moment to be downstairs and meet those wonderful folks, you know, that you work with, and to meet that young woman who walked in and looked like she was getting ready to go on stage with the Funkadelics, who's in Nashville for the first day of her life. You know, I didn't know they were on Earth when I woke up this morning.
Yeah. This is one of their hats right here. Let's give them a shout out. Nashville Custom Hats.
And you they do great work.
You got a hat.
I got a great one.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot of things I want to touch on. So you referenced playing golf with Ray Benson, and I know you had a credit I saw on maybe a couple of Sleep at the Wheel records. One was a Christmas.
I haven't made but one Asleep at the Wheel record, but I love Ray Benson. He's one of the most important people in my life. His son Sam as well, who now manages a lot of really amazing artists, some that I'm very interested in, both as a fan and as a music executive.
Who are those?
Willie Carlisle, I'm crazy about.
Oh, I know. Yeah, okay.
Tammy Nielsen, crazy about her. He's got this new band called The Big Richard, which is like to be like a play on Big Dicks.
Got it.
And they're a bluegrass band, but they're outrageous. And Sam, the first time I saw Sam, he was 6 years old on a stage with his dad in Austin playing a plastic fiddle with a cowboy hat on. Now he's probably 40 years old. But Ray to me is one of the most important people on earth. He's an incredible human being, great friend, great father, great citizen, so involved with so many philanthropies. And he loves doing it because he loves music. And to think that this is a Jewish kid from Philadelphia to move to Papa, West Virginia, to be the East Coast version of the Grateful Dead, that ended up in Austin to become the keeper of, you know, Texas swing music and Bob Wills and all that legacy is amazing. But his knowledge of music is amazing, and you know he has an incredible friendship and long-standing life and friendship with Willie Nelson, and I've been with Willie a number of times, specifically with Ray. And that's always been an honor. I got to make one record with Willie Nelson one time in my life, which was such an honor. I was working with an artist named Janice Ian, who was iconic folk singer from the late 60s, early 70s, and we made a record, and she wrote a song called Memphis. And it was almost like turn of the century, still steamboats, and just amazing, amazing song. And I heard it, and I said, Janice, we should get Willie Nelson to sing with you on this. She goes, Willie Nelson's never going to sing with me. I said, well, why wouldn't he? He sings with almost everybody that he wants to. All we can do is ask, and all he can do is say no. And we got a call back a couple of days after getting it to him and to his manager. And Willie Nelson said he will do it, but he'll only do it on July 3rd, 1999. And this was maybe the end of June, 1999.
Wow.
But he'll only do it under one circumstance. And I'm like, okay, what is that? Janice Ian must play the Willie Nelson picnic the next day on July 4th.
I knew that had something to do with it.
And I'm like, oh my God. And I remember calling her up, and she was so joyous, one, that it was going to happen, and then just so flattered and flattened that the man would say, oh, I'll sing on your record if you'll come play my picnic with all these iconic human beings and this incredible audience that will be somewhere out in the hill country outside of Austin, Texas.
Yeah, man.
And we went to the studio, Pertinelli's, on July 3rd.
Beautiful golf course. Willie bought a golf course. Let the family move in.
It was sort of a dirt track, but it was, and the studio was great, and he had this vocal booth that was out in the lobby. It was just an amazing, and I figured Willie Nelson's going to come in here, he's going to sing this once, and he's going to be gone. So just pay attention, everybody.
Yeah.
He showed up. He rehearsed the song for almost 2.5, 3 hours.
Really?
In this little booth, just listening to it, listening. He came in, he sings it, in the studio. Her lead vocal was already there. He comes in after the first take, and he's sitting there, and he's got his head down, and he's shaking his head back and forth. And I'm thinking, what could he possibly, he must love it, and he looks up and he goes, she deserves so much better than that.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm going to go back out there. He sang for almost another 3 hours that afternoon.
Wow.
And it was just amazing. And then he came in, we listened to the playback. It was just amazing. Everybody sort of filed out. I'm sitting in the control room at Perdinelli's. Willie lights up a joint. I'm like, please, God, let Willie Nelson hand this to me, which he did. And I got so stoned, I had to drive to my wife's her grandfather's like 85th birthday party or something at this little camp out in the country, and I was like, I might be too high to drive the car. I might have to have a couple of beers. But and I've been around him a number of times, and he's one of the most magnanimous human beings, and what a gift to this world he is, and his family, and Lucas and Micah, and his sister Bobby in heaven, but just an amazing, amazing guy. And I did have the pleasure one time, after Asleep at the Wheel did their 40th anniversary at a beautiful music hall in Austin, and Willie performed with the band for about 40 minutes. And it's the only time I've ever seen him play with somebody else's band. And it was so different, and it was so amazing, and it was ferocious. And we're sitting out on the bus, and I got to tell him the Willie Nelson joke.
Let's hear it.
What is the last thing a 21-year-old girl wants to hear after having sex with Willie Nelson? Or, I'm not Willie Nelson.
Yeah. That's a cleaner take on it.
But anyway, he laughed, and had
he ever heard it before?
If he did, he pretended like he didn't, and I'm sure he has.
Surely he has.
I'm sure he's heard everything under the sun, and his knowledge and passion for music. And that afternoon, after he did the thing with Janice, we sat for about 30, 40 minutes, and he was just talking about music and jazz and this and that. I mean, his love and appreciation for music is stunning. His work ethic, stunning. And I know people just saw him a couple of weeks ago in Austin at the picnic that said he was magnificent. Friends of mine just saw him at Jones Beach with Dylan and Wilco, and I think Lucinda Williams was on that bill, and they said he was stunning. That's my kind of guy.
Oh, man. Okay, so when we're in that world, that Austin world, I know that, dude, there's a record. I used to collect records in Austin, and I found a record, the Austin Rhythm and Blues Christmas.
Right.
And you're accredited on that record.
Well, I was working at Epic Records, and I was going in and out of Austin because of a friend of mine named Wayne Nagel, who called up one day and goes, this is Wayne Nagel. I want you to come to Austin, Texas this Friday to see Will in the Kill. I said, Will in the Kill? Yeah, Will Sexton. And I'm like, and I'd never been to Austin. And I said, that's funny. I just met this guy the other night out here in Hollywood named Charlie Sexton. He goes, that's his big brother.
Yep.
I said, how old is Will? He goes, he's 15, and he's playing on Friday night, and you need to come. I'm like, okay. I said, who else is on the bill? He goes, the True Believers. I'm like, I'll see you on Friday, because I love Alejandro Escovedo is one of the most amazing artists and friend, but amazing artist and one of the most important people on God's green earth.
So New York and Austin. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Right?
So he's, and he's from the Bay Area. He's a gypsy. He's amazing, amazing. So the point being is I started going to Austin as often as I could. I heard that record. I got the people at Epic Records to buy that record, and we put it out.
Wow.
I got the fabulous Thunderbirds signed to a deal when they put out Tough Enough, which the guys I worked for wouldn't put it out, but Tony Martell, who ran the Associated Labels, who I know because of my early days with Nempera Records and Nat Weiss, where I worked with Steve Forbert and Stanley Clark and Jan Hammer, and signed the Romantics. And the Romantics are the first band I ever signed in my life, and the first record I ever made in my life that I did everything and had no idea what I was doing was What I Like About You.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty good start. I was very lucky and fortunate about that.
Hell yeah.
But I just have an incredible affinity for Austin and the Hill Country and small town Texas and Texas music.
Yeah.
And I tell people, I'm from New York. My cell phone rings in L.A. My heart is stuck in Austin. No, my heart is in Austin, Texas, and I'm stuck in Nashville with the Memphis Blues again.
Yeah, great Nashvilleian article that highlights you as the Pope of 5 points.
Well, that was nice of Chuck to do that.
Yeah, a good buddy. Okay, you're talking about iconic Texas people, and on that record, the Rhythm and Blues Christmas, Paul Ray. And I remember for years Paul Ray on KUT.
Oh yeah,
this is Twine Time.
Yeah, Twine Time. Yeah,
yeah, man.
And I got to be around Tim. When I was coming and going, and I was coming and going a lot from Austin, Texas. I mean, in fact, my friend Monty Warden, who's in the Wagoneers, who I signed, first act I signed to A&M Records, is actually playing the Grand Ole Opry here tonight. And
are we going?
I don't know if I'm going to be able to
Okay.
make it. I think we have a dinner, and then there's another act I'm going to see that you're going to meet when we drive over to Marathon Music in a minute. But I got to see Monty sing yesterday. He did the WMOT, Finally Fridays.
Yeah.
And it was just like time traveling between seeing him, seeing Cheap Trick the night before. Because with the Romantics, we used to tour with Cheap Trick for years.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And the shows were incredible. Robin Zander, to this day, is one of my favorite singers. That band is one of my favorite bands. I miss Bunny Carlos being in that band, but Rick Nielsen's kid, Dax, the other night crushed it. Robin looked great. He sang great. Tom Peterson's become a good friend, and he's an amazing human being. Amazing, cat, great father. So, and great bass player, and great singer, and great looking.
Well, you're a great man, and we're kind of coming to the end of this segment. You got another one in you, or you want to go to the marathon?
I think it's time to go to the music marathon, but we can come back and do this. I really enjoy this, and I enjoy people need to hear stories. I hope the story resonates with one person, two people. It's funny, the other day I did one of these, and a friend of mine said, well, tell everybody your contact information. And I actually even gave him my cell number, and I'm not going to do that today. They'll find me through you, King Corduroy, who's my friend, neighbor, and somebody I admire madly.
Oh, man, I love you. I appreciate
Thank you.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, people, reach out to me if you want to talk to Patrick.
Happy to do so.
Yeah, or you want to send him a
Keep
record.
those cards and letters coming, and live the dream and work the dream. And don't look for a deal. Go be the real deal and just find great partners every step of the way.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
good luck doing that, believe me.
I love it. Much love to you.
My delight. Thank you so much, King.
There he goes.
King Corduroy with the Pope of 5 points.
My man.